Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, her hands folded carefully in her lap. The massive dome above her head showed the swirling colors of space, with thousands of stars twinkling like distant diamonds. Around her, representatives from over 200 different species filled the curved rows of seats. Some looked like humans. Others were completely alien with tentacles, multiple eyes, or bodies that seemed to shift and change. Elena had been Earth's representative for 15 years now. In all that time, she had seen humanity grow from newcomers to respected members of the galactic community. At least that's what she had thought until today. The Zephyrian delegate, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, was speaking at the central podium. His voice was calm and pleasant, but his words made Elena's blood run cold. The incidents on the human colonies were unfortunate, the Zephyrian said, his golden eyes scanning the chamber. But we must understand that space is dangerous. Sometimes accidents happen when different species encounter each other in the outer regions. Elena stood up quickly, her chair scraping against the floor. Accidents? She said, her voice carrying across the chamber. You call the massacre of 30,000 civilians an accident? A ripple of whispers went through the assembly. Some delegates turned to look at her with what seemed like amusement. Others simply ignored her as if she hadn't spoken at all. The Zephyrian delegate smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The humans are emotional creatures, he said to the chamber. They see conflict where none exist. Perhaps they need time to mature before they can understand the complexities of galactic politics. More whispers. And this time Elena heard some delegates actually laughing. She felt her face grow hot with anger and embarrassment. The council speaker, an ancient being called a Vortan who looked like a giant tree with eyes, tapped his staff on the floor. The delegate from Earth may present her evidence, he said in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. Elena activated her holographic display. Images filled the air above the chamber. Burning buildings, destroyed ships, and bodies scattered across what had once been peaceful farming communities. The images showed the 3 human colonies that had been attacked just 2 weeks ago. New Harmony, Eden's Rest, and Peaceful Valley, Elena said, her voice steady despite her anger. 3 colonies in the outer rim sectors. They were farming communities with no military installations, no weapons, and no strategic value. The attacks came without warning and without cause. The images changed, showing the aftermath. Children's toys scattered among the ruins. A school that had been bombed while classes were in session. A hospital that had been targeted specifically. Its Red Cross symbol clearly visible on the wreckage. These were not military targets, Elena continued. These were families, farmers, teachers, and doctors. They had been living peacefully in those systems for over 50 years. She paused, looking around the chamber. Most delegates were looking at their personal devices or talking quietly among themselves. Only a few seemed to be paying attention to her presentation. The evidence clearly shows that Zephyrian warships conducted these attacks, Elena said, highlighting the distinctive energy signatures and weapon patterns in the data. We have recordings of Zephyrian commanders ordering the strikes. We have DNA evidence from the assault teams that landed to finish off survivors. The Zephyrian delegate laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The humans present interesting fairy tales, he said. But where is the proof that these attacks were ordered by the Zephyrian Empire? Perhaps these were pirates or rogue elements that the humans themselves hired to create a crisis. Elena stared at him in shock. You're suggesting we killed our own people? I suggest nothing, the Zephyrian replied. I merely point out that humans are known for their creativity when seeking attention or advantage. The chamber erupted in what Elena could only call polite applause. Delegates nodded appreciatively at the Zephyrian's words. She realized with growing horror that they weren't just dismissing her evidence, they were enjoying her humiliation. Elena tried again, presenting more evidence. She showed intercepted communications between Zephyrian fleet commanders. She displayed the serial numbers of weapons fragments found at the attack sites, all traced to Zephyrian military factories. She even had testimony from surviving witnesses who had seen Zephyrian soldiers during the attacks. Each piece of evidence was dismissed or explained away. The communications were called fabricated. The weapons could have been stolen or sold on black markets. The witnesses were traumatized humans whose memories couldn't be trusted. After 3 hours of this, the council speaker finally called for a vote on Elena's request for an investigation and justice for the attacks. The vote wasn't even close. Of the 247 species represented in the council, only 12 voted to support Earth's request. Even some of humanity's supposed allies voted against them or simply abstracted. As the final vote was announced, Elena heard delegates talking among themselves. Their words carried clearly in the chamber's acoustics. "The humans are too soft," said the representative from the Kratex Empire. "They've been in space for 2 centuries and still act like children." "They have some nice technology," replied a Nexari delegate, "but no backbone to use it properly. They're useful as mediators and peacekeepers, but not much else." A third voice from somewhere behind Elena added with amusement, "Perhaps this will teach them to stay in their designated sectors. Space is for species that understand strength." Elena gathered her materials with shaking hands. As she prepared to leave the chamber, the Zephyrian delegate approached her with what might have been meant as a friendly smile. No hard feelings. "Ambassador," he said, his 4 hands spread in a gesture of mock friendship, "perhaps your people will learn from this experience. The galaxy is a harsh place for species that refuse to defend themselves properly." Elena looked up at the tall alien, her brown eyes blazing with controlled fury. "We have defended ourselves for 200 years through diplomacy and cooperation," she said quietly. "We chose to be builders and healers instead of conquerors." The Zephyrian's laugh was genuinely amused now. "Yes, we know. Everyone knows. The peaceful humans who never fight back no matter what happens to them. It's almost charming. In its naivety." He leaned down closer to her, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a confidential tone. "But charm doesn't protect colonies, does it? Perhaps it's time your species learned that lesson." As Elena walked out of the chamber, she could hear the conversations continuing behind her. Delegates were already moving on to other business. The massacre of 30,000 humans already forgotten. Some were even making jokes about human emotional outbursts and the entertainment value of their dramatic presentations. Elena made her way through the massive corridors of the council station, past artwork and monuments representing hundreds of different cultures. For nearly 2 centuries, humanity had contributed to this place, sharing their knowledge, their culture, and their resources. They had served as neutral mediators in conflicts between other species. They had provided disaster relief, medical aid, and technological assistance to dozens of worlds. And when they needed help, when their own people were murdered, the response was laughter and dismissal. Elena reached her private communication chamber and activated the quantum link to Earth. Within moments, she was looking at the familiar faces of the Human Defense Council, the 5 people who made the most important decisions about humanity's place in the galaxy. "How did it go?" asked Director Sarah Chen, though Elena's expression probably already told her everything she needed to know. "Complete failure," Elena replied, slumping into her chair. "They dismissed everything. Worse than dismissed, they turned it into entertainment." The Zephyrian delegate practically admitted to the attacks, and the chamber applauded him for it. General Marcus Webb, the head of the Human Defense Forces, leaned forward on the screen. His scarred face was grim. "What about our allies? The Altarians? The Century Federation?" Elena shook her head. "The Altarians abstained. The Century voted against us. They said they couldn't support unsubstantiated accusations that might destabilize galactic peace." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the science advisor, spoke up. "They know we have proof. The evidence is overwhelming." "Evidence doesn't matter," Elena said, feeling the weight of defeat settling on her shoulders. "What matters is that they see us as weak. They think we're too soft to fight back, so there are no consequences for attacking us." President Maria Santos appeared on the screen, joining the call from her office on Earth. "Elena, I've been monitoring the situation. We need to discuss our options." Elena nodded, though she wasn't sure what options they had left. For 200 years, humanity had chosen the path of peace. They had built their reputation on being reasonable, diplomatic, and willing to compromise. They were the species other governments called when they needed a neutral mediator or a peaceful solution to conflicts. But now Elena understood something that chilled her to the bone. The other species didn't see humanity's peaceful nature as wisdom or strength. They saw it as weakness. They saw humans as convenient servants who could be pushed around without fear of retaliation. "The Zephyrian delegate made it clear this isn't over," Elena told the council. "He said this was a lesson for us to learn. I think they're planning more attacks." General Webb's face hardened. "How many more of our people have to die before we're allowed to defend ourselves?" Marcus, President Santos warned, we've always found another way. Have we? Webb shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, our peaceful approach just got 30,000 people killed and the murderers rewarded with applause. Elena closed her eyes, remembering the laughter in the chamber. They called us charming in our naivety. They think we're harmless pets who exist for their amusement. The conversation continued for another hour, but Elena found herself thinking about something else. She remembered her grandfather, who had been a soldier in one of Earth's last wars before humanity reached the stars. He had told her stories about what humans could do when they were truly threatened. We chose to be better, he had said. But never forget, Elena, that it was a choice, and choices can be changed. After the call ended, Elena sat alone in her chamber staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 human colonies lay in ruins. 30,000 people were dead, including children who would never grow up and parents who would never see their families again. And the galaxy thought it was funny. Elena activated her personal communicator and sent a message to Earth, marked with the highest priority code. The message was simple but carried enormous weight. All diplomatic solutions have been exhausted. The galaxy has made its position clear. Request immediate authorization to activate Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Elena had never thought she would be the one to recommend it. For 200 years, it had existed only in theory. A contingency plan that everyone hoped would never be needed. It was the protocol that would tell the galaxy exactly why humanity had been so careful to remain peaceful for so long. As Elena transmitted the message, she wondered if the Zephyrian delegate would still be laughing in a few days. She suspected he would not be laughing at all. The breaking point had been reached. Humanity's patience, tested and stretched for 2 centuries, had finally snapped. And the galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they stopped trying to be the good guys. Admiral Chen Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Determination, staring at the tactical display that showed the human fleet spread across 3 star systems. His dark eyes reflected the red warning lights that had been flashing for the past 6 hours, ever since the attacks began. Sir, we're receiving another distress call from New Geneva, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the communications station. They're requesting immediate evacuation support. The Zephyrian fleet has broken through their orbital defenses. Chen nodded grimly. New Geneva was the 3rd human system to come under attack in the past 24 hours. First Kepler Station, then Terra Verde, and now New Geneva. Each attack had been swift, brutal, and perfectly coordinated. What's the status of the evacuations? Chen asked. Kepler Station managed to get most of their civilians out before the station was destroyed, Kim replied. Terra Verde? We lost contact with them 4 hours ago. New Geneva is holding for now, but barely. Chen walked to the central command chair, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the strain of the past day's events. These were good people, trained for peacekeeping and exploration missions. They had never expected to find themselves in a real war. But then again, none of humanity had expected this. Sir, called out Commander David Park from the tactical station. I'm reading massive Zephyrian fleet movements in the outer sectors. It looks like they're positioning for attacks on at least 6 more systems. Chen felt his jaw clench. The Zephyrian Empire had clearly planned this campaign carefully. They weren't just raiding human colonies randomly. This was a systematic assault designed to cripple humanity's presence in the Outer Rim territories. They're testing us, Chen said, more to himself than to his crew. They want to see how we respond. Lieutenant Commander Kim looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. They're offering terms, Chen raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of a Zephyrian warship. The alien commander was tall and imposing, with the typical blue skin and 4 arms of his species. His golden eyes held what could only be described as amusement. Admiral Morrison, the Zephyrian said, his voice carrying a tone of mock respect. I am Fleet Commander Zarthek of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. I believe we need to discuss the current situation. You mean your unprovoked attacks on civilian populations? Chen replied, his voice steady and cold. Zarthek's laugh was like breaking glass. Attacks? Admiral, you misunderstand. We are conducting liberation operations. Your colonies were built in systems that rightfully belong to the Zephyrian Empire and our allies. Chen had studied the star charts. The attacked systems had been settled by humans over 50 years ago, with full approval from the Galactic Council. There had never been any competing claims. Those are legally recognized human territories, Chen said. Were, Zarthek corrected. Past tense, Admiral. The galaxy is changing and humanity must change with it. You have two options. Withdraw from all disputed territories or face the consequences of your stubbornness. Chen looked at the alien commander for a long moment. And if we choose neither option? Zarthek's smile widened, showing his sharp teeth. Admiral, let's be honest with each other. Your species has been in space for 2 centuries, and in all that time you have never fought a real war. You are mediators and peacekeepers, builders and dreamers. We, on the other hand, have conquered 17 star systems in the past 50 years alone. The Zephyrian leaned forward, his 4 hands clasped in front of him. Your reputation precedes you, Admiral Morrison. The peaceful human fleet commander who has never fired a shot in anger. The man who solved the Rigel crisis through negotiation and compromise. Very admirable, very civilized. Chen felt his crew's eyes on him. They all knew his reputation, knew that he had spent his entire career avoiding military conflicts through diplomacy and careful maneuvering. Your point? Chen asked. My point is that peace-loving species make poor warriors, Zarthek replied. You lack the killer instinct, the willingness to do what must be done. You will hesitate when you should act, negotiate when you should fight. It is simply not in your nature to wage war effectively. Zarthek gestured broadly with his arms. Look at your fleet disposition, Admiral. Even now, facing direct attacks on your colonies, you have spread your ships thin trying to protect everyone. A warrior species would concentrate their forces and strike back hard and fast, but you try to save everyone and end up saving no one. Chen had to admit the alien had a point. Human military doctrine had always focused on defense and protection, rather than offense and conquest. Their ships were designed for patrol duties, disaster relief, and peacekeeping operations. They had the firepower to defend themselves, but they had never developed the aggressive tactics needed for large-scale warfare. I'll give you 12 hours to consider my offer, Zarthek continued. Withdraw from the disputed territories, and we will allow your civilians safe passage to the inner systems. Refuse, and we will continue our liberation operations until you see reason. The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. Sir? Commander Park asked quietly. Chen was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything Zarthek had said. The alien commander was right about human military philosophy. They had always chosen protection over aggression, defense over offense. Their entire fleet was built around the idea of avoiding conflicts rather than winning them. But Zarthek had made one critical error in his analysis. Commander Park, Chen said finally, access the classified files under Protocol 7 authorization. I need to see the real specifications for our ships. Park looked confused. Sir? I have access to all our ship specifications. Chen turned to face his tactical officer. No, Commander. You have access to the published specifications. The ones we share with the Galactic Council and our allies. I need you to access the classified files. Park hesitated, then began typing at his console. A few seconds later, his eyes widened in surprise. Sir, these readings can't be correct. According to these files, our weapons output is... Park paused, double-checking his data. Sir, these numbers are 4 times higher than what I thought our capabilities were. Chen nodded. What about our defensive systems? Park continued reading, his surprise growing. Energy shields rated for impacts that should be impossible to defend against. Armor plating made from materials I've never heard of. And our engines. Park looked up at Chen in amazement. Sir, according to this, we can travel 3 times faster than I thought possible. And our sensor capabilities? Chen asked. Complete stealth detection, quantum communication arrays, tactical analysis systems that can predict enemy movements. Park shook his head in confusion. Admiral, why don't we use these systems? Chen walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars through the main viewing port. Because for 200 years humanity has chosen to be the galaxy's peacekeepers rather than its conquerors. We deliberately limited our capabilities to avoid intimidating other species. He turned back to his crew. The human defense forces have always operated under restrictive protocols. We use our ships at 30% power output. We employ only basic weapon systems, and we follow rules of engagement that prioritize avoiding casualties over achieving victory. Lieutenant Commander Kim spoke up from her station. But sir, if we have these capabilities, why did we let the colonies get attacked? Why didn't we defend them? Chen's expression grew grim. Because we were following 2 centuries of established protocol. We were trying to be the reasonable ones, the ones who don't escalate conflicts. We were waiting for diplomatic solutions and council approval. He activated his command console and began typing in authorization codes. But the time for being reasonable has passed. Commander Park, send a coded message to all human ships and installations. Authorization, Protocol 7, full military authority. Park typed rapidly, then paused. Sir, I'm getting confirmation requests from every ship in the fleet. They want to verify that we're really authorizing unlimited tactical response. Chen looked around at his bridge crew, people he had served with for years, people who had trusted him to keep them safe through peaceful solutions. Now he was about to ask them to become something they had never been before. Confirm the authorization, Chen said quietly, and patch me through to the entire fleet. A few moments later, Kim nodded. All ships are receiving, Admiral. Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system. This is Admiral Chen Morrison to all human vessels and installations. As of this moment, all previous tactical restrictions are lifted. All ships are authorized to operate at full military capacity. All personnel are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to protect human lives and interests. He paused, knowing that his next words would change everything for humanity's place in the galaxy. For 2 centuries, we have chosen to be the galaxy's peacekeepers. We have limited our capabilities and restrained our responses because we believed in the power of diplomacy and cooperation. Today, that choice was rejected. Today, we learned that the galaxy sees our peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited. Chen's voice grew harder. The Zephyrian Empire and their allies have declared war on humanity through their actions. They have murdered our civilians and destroyed our homes. They believe we are too weak and too civilized to fight back effectively. Around the bridge, Chen could see his crew sitting straighter, their expressions becoming more focused and determined. They are about to learn that they have made a critical miscalculation, Chen continued. Our peaceful nature was never weakness, it was a choice. And that choice has been revoked. Chen ended the fleet-wide transmission and turned back to his tactical officer. Commander Park, show me the real capabilities of the determination. Park activated his console, and suddenly the bridge displays changed completely. New tactical information flooded the screens, showing weapon systems and defensive capabilities that exceeded anything the crew had imagined. Sir, Park said, his voice filled with awe. We're not just a heavy cruiser. According to these specifications, we're a battleship. And not just any battleship, we're more powerful than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. Chen nodded. And we're one of the smaller ships in the human fleet. Commander, calculate our optimal response to the current Zephyrian positions. Parky worked at his console, accessing tactical programs that had been locked away for 2 centuries. Sir, with our real capabilities, we don't need to spread thin to protect all the colonies. We can hit their fleet concentrations directly and eliminate their offensive capability in. Sir, the computer says we can end this conflict in less than a week. Chen felt a cold smile cross his face. Then let's prove to the galaxy that humanity's patience has limits. As orders went out across the human fleet, ancient systems came online for the first time in 2 centuries. Ships that had been pretending to be simple patrol vessels revealed their true nature as advanced warships. Weapons that had been operating at minimal power began charging to full capacity. The Zephyrian Empire had made their calculation based on humanity's peaceful reputation and apparently limited capabilities. It was a reasonable calculation based on the information available to them. It was also completely wrong. Humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly why they had been so careful to remain peaceful for so long. The first shot of humanity's real war was fired at exactly 0800, Galactic Standard Time on what would later be called Day 1 of the 6-Day War. Admiral Chen Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Determination as his ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima system. Around him, 23 other human vessels materialized from the void, their hulls gleaming with energy fields that hadn't been seen in 200 years. Target analysis complete, Admiral, reported Commander Park from the tactical station. 18 Zephyrian vessels in defensive formation around Proxima Station. They appear to be using the station as a shield against direct assault. Chen studied the tactical display. Proxima Station had been a human research facility until 3 days ago. Now it was occupied by Zephyrian forces who were using it as a forward base for their attacks on human colonies. Intelligence reports indicated they had executed the research staff and were holding about 200 human civilians as prisoners. Sir? Lieutenant Commander Kim called from communications. We're being hailed by the Zephyrian Fleet Commander, Chen nodded. On screen, the familiar face of Fleet Commander Zarthek appeared on the main display. The Zephyrian looked confident and amused, surrounded by the bridge crew of his flagship. Admiral Morrison, Zarthek said with his characteristic mocking tone. How predictable. You arrive exactly as our tactical analysis suggested you would, with insufficient force and at the worst possible tactical position. Chen said nothing, simply watching the alien commander with calm eyes. Zarthek continued, You have 24 ships against our 18, which would normally give you an advantage. But we control the station and hold your civilians. You cannot fire upon us without killing your own people. Meanwhile, we can use the station's defensive systems and our superior positioning to destroy your fleet piece by piece. The Zephyrian's forearms spread in a gesture of mock sympathy. This is exactly what I meant about your species lacking the warrior instinct, Admiral. A proper military force would have sacrificed the civilians to achieve victory. But humans? You will hesitate, negotiate, and ultimately retreat to avoid casualties. Chen finally spoke, his voice quiet and steady. You're holding 200 human civilians prisoner? Insurance, Zarthek replied. They ensure that you cannot use your full firepower against our position. Quite clever, don't you think? Chen looked at the tactical display again, noting the positions of all the Zephyrian ships and the station itself. Commander Park, he said without taking his eyes off the screen. Can you confirm the exact location of the human prisoners? Park worked at his console, using sensors that were far more advanced than anything the Zephyrians knew humans possessed. Yes, sir. They're being held in sections C4 through C7 of the station. The Zephyrian troops are positioned throughout the rest of the facility. Chen nodded, then looked back at Zarthek. I'm going to give you one chance to surrender and release the prisoners. Zarthek's laughter echoed across the bridge. Surrender? Admiral, you are in no position to make demands. You have walked into a trap of our design. Your only choice is to withdraw or watch your fleet be destroyed. I see, Chen said calmly. In that case, you have 30 seconds to abandon the station. Zarthek's laughter stopped. What did you say? 30 seconds, Chen repeated. After that, I will demonstrate why humanity has spent 2 centuries trying very hard not to wage war. The Zephyrian commander's expression changed from amusement to confusion to anger. You're bluffing. You cannot fire on the station without killing your own people. Chen turned to his weapons officer, a young lieutenant named Torres who was staring at his console in amazement. Lieutenant, are the precision targeting systems online? Torres checked his displays, accessing weapon systems he had never seen before. Sir, these targeting computers they're incredible. According to the readouts, we can place shots accurate to within centimeters at this range. Chen nodded. Target all Zephyrian personnel positions on the station. Avoid sections C4 through C7. Use beam weapons set for surgical strikes. Torres's hands moved over his controls, and suddenly the weapons display showed a level of detail that seemed impossible. Individual life signs appeared on the screen, differentiated by species and marked with targeting solutions. Sir, Torres said, his voice filled with awe. The computer is showing me exactly where every Zephyrian soldier is positioned. It can trace their locations through the station's bulkheads and target them individually. On the main screen, Zarthek was growing more agitated. You're lying. No species has targeting technology that precise. Chen's expression remained calm. 15 seconds. Zarthek turned to his crew, barking orders in his own language. Chen could see the alien ships beginning to power their weapons and prepare for battle. 5 seconds, Chen announced. You're insane, Zarthek shouted. You'll kill your own people. Chen looked directly into the alien commander's eyes. 3, 2, 1, Fire. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The human ships opened fire with weapons that defied everything the galaxy thought. It knew about energy projection and targeting accuracy. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from the human fleet, each one following a precisely calculated path through space. The beams struck Proxima Station at hundreds of different points simultaneously. But instead of the massive explosion Zarthek expected, the energy beams seemed to surgically dissect the station's structure. Sections of hull plating were peeled away with surgical precision, exposing the interior compartments where Zephyrian soldiers were positioned. Secondary beams followed the first salvo, striking individual targets inside the station. On the tactical display, Chen could see each Zephyrian life sign winking out as the precision strikes found their marks. The entire attack lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, Proxima Station was still intact and functional, but every Zephyrian aboard was dead. Impossible, Zarthek whispered, staring at the tactical data streaming from the station. No one has weapons that precise. Chen activated the ship's external communications. Proxima Station, this is Admiral Morrison. Please respond if any human personnel are still alive. A crackling voice came over the speakers. Admiral, this is Dr. Sarah Williams. We're alive, all of us. How did you? The Zephyrians are all dead, but you didn't hit any of the areas where we were being held. Chen allowed himself a small smile. Are you and the other civilians injured, Doctor? Some minor injuries from when they captured us, but we're okay. Admiral, how did you do that? The precision required to... Chen cut the communication and turned back to the main screen, where Zarthek was staring in shocked disbelief. That's impossible, the Zephyrian commander repeated. Our intelligence report showed that human weapons were limited to basic energy projection. You don't have the technology for that kind of precision targeting. Chen's expression was calm but cold. Your intelligence was based on what we allowed you to see. For 200 years, we have operated our ships and weapons at 30% of their actual capability. We did this to avoid intimidating other species and to maintain our role as peacekeepers. Chen gestured to the tactical display, which now showed the true capabilities of the human fleet. These ships are not patrol vessels or exploration craft. They are warships designed for one purpose: to protect humanity from any threat anywhere in the galaxy. Zarthek looked at the readouts, showing human ship specifications that were far beyond what he had expected. Your ships? They're more advanced than anything in our fleet. Yes, Chen replied simply. And now you understand why we have been so careful to remain peaceful for so long. The Zephyrian commander was clearly struggling to process this new information. His entire strategy had been based on the assumption that humans were technologically inferior and militarily inexperienced. Commander Park, Chen said, turning to his tactical officer. What is the status of the Zephyrian fleet? Park checked his displays, now operating with full military sensors. Sir, they're in complete disarray. Their formation has collapsed, and several ships are trying to withdraw to a safe distance. They appear to be. They're running away, sir. Chen nodded. Open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels. When the connection was established, Chen's voice carried clearly to every ship in the alien fleet. This is Admiral Morrison to all Zephyrian forces. You have witnessed what human military technology can accomplish when we choose to use it. You have seen that we can neutralize your forces while protecting our own people. Chen's voice grew harder. You now have a choice. You can continue this war, in which case you will discover exactly how advanced human military capabilities really are, or you can withdraw from all human territories and return to your own space. There was a long pause before Zarthek responded. Admiral, we were told that humans were weak, that you lacked the will to fight. We lack the will to start fights, Chen corrected, but we have never lacked the ability to finish them. We chose to be diplomats and peacekeepers because we believed it was better for everyone. Today we learned that the galaxy sees our choice as weakness to be exploited. Chen looked directly at the Zephyrian commander. That was a mistake, Fleet Commander, and now you and your allies will face the consequences. On the tactical display, Chen could see several Zephyrian ships powering down their weapons and beginning to withdraw from the system, but others remained in position, clearly preparing to continue the fight. Some of your ships appear ready to continue this engagement, Chen observed. Zarthek looked at his own tactical displays, then back at Chen. Admiral, Even with your advanced technology, you are still outnumbered across multiple systems. We have fleets attacking 6 human colonies simultaneously. You cannot be everywhere at once. Chen's smile was cold and completely without humor. Can't we? He turned to Commander Kim. Signal all human vessels throughout the fleet. Execute Operation Thunderbolt. Kim's fingers flew over her console, sending coded messages across quantum communication channels that the Zephyrians couldn't intercept or block. Operation Thunderbolt initiated, Kim reported. All fleets report ready for simultaneous engagement. Chen looked back at Zarthek. Fleet Commander, you made your plans based on the assumption that human forces would respond slowly and predictably. You believed we would spread our ships thin, trying to defend everything. The main display split to show tactical feeds from 6 different star systems. In each one, human fleets were dropping out of hyperspace in perfect coordination. Instead, Chen continued, we concentrated our forces for maximum effect. While you were focused on this system, we positioned our fleets for coordinated strikes on all of your attack groups simultaneously. Zarthek stared at the displays showing Zephyrian fleets being engaged by human forces across half a dozen systems. This is impossible. You don't have enough ships for operations on this scale. Chen's expression was grim. Fleet Commander, you have no idea how many ships we actually have. For 200 years, most of our fleet has remained in reserve, hidden in systems you never knew we controlled. The truth was finally sinking in for the Zephyrian commander. Humanity hadn't been weak or unprepared. They had been deliberately restraining themselves. Everything the aliens thought they knew about human military capabilities had been carefully managed disinformation. This is day 1 of your war against humanity, Chen said. By the end of today, all of your forward bases will be neutralized. Your attack fleets will be destroyed or in full retreat, and you will understand that provoking a peaceful species is far more dangerous than fighting an aggressive one. Chen turned to his crew. All stations prepare for systematic engagement of remaining hostile forces. Show them what 2 centuries of military advancement looks like when it's finally unleashed. As the human fleet moved to attack positions, Zarthek made one final transmission. Admiral Morrison, you have made an enemy of the entire Zephyrian Empire today. Chen's response was quiet but carried absolute certainty. No, Fleet Commander. Today, the Zephyrian Empire discovered that it was already the enemy of humanity. We just finally decided to do something about it. The battle for Proxima Station was over in less than an hour. It was the first victory in what would become the most one-sided conflict in galactic history. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was capable of when they stopped trying to be everyone's friend. Day 2 began with emergency sessions in the Galactic Council chambers. Ambassador. Elena Vasquez watched from the human delegation box as representatives from dozens of species demanded explanations for the human aggression that had apparently erupted overnight. The Altarian delegate, a tall humanoid with silver skin, was speaking from the central podium. The reports we're receiving are deeply disturbing, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Human forces have apparently launched unprovoked attacks on multiple Zephyrian positions, using weapons technology that violates several galactic treaties. Elena stood up, her patience finally gone completely. Unprovoked? She said, her voice cutting through the murmurs in the chamber. 3 days ago, I stood in this very chamber and presented evidence of Zephyrian attacks on our colonies. This council voted to ignore that evidence and deny us justice. The council speaker tapped his staff. The delegate from Earth will limit her remarks to the current situation. Elena ignored him and continued speaking. 30,000 human civilians were murdered in unprovoked attacks. When we asked for help, you laughed at us. When we presented evidence, you dismissed it as entertainment. Well, congratulations. You've just learned what happens when you force a peaceful species to seek justice on their own. The Zephyrian delegate, a different one from the council meeting days earlier, stood up from his seat. The humans have revealed illegal weapons technology and launched terrorist attacks on legitimate Zephyrian operations. Elena turned to stare at him. Legitimate operations? You mean your invasion fleets that were attacking more human colonies? Your occupation forces that were executing prisoners? She activated her holographic display, showing footage from the Battle of Proxima Station. This is what precision looks like when a species actually develops military technology instead of just stealing territory from peaceful, Neighbors. The footage showed the surgical strikes that had eliminated every Zephyrian soldier on the station while leaving the human prisoners completely unharmed. The precision was so perfect it seemed almost impossible. Our weapons hit their intended targets within centimeters of accuracy, Elena continued. We could have destroyed the entire station and everyone on it. Instead, we saved our people and eliminated only the invaders. If that's terrorism, then perhaps the galaxy needs to reconsider what the word means. Around the chamber, delegates were watching the footage with expressions ranging from amazement to fear. The level of technological advancement displayed was far beyond what anyone had expected from humanity. The Kratek's representative, a heavily armored warrior species, spoke up. These weapons capabilities were never declared to the Council. This represents a violation of the Military Technology Disclosure Treaty. Elena laughed, and the sound was not pleasant. The treaty that requires disclosure of offensive military capabilities. The same treaty that the Zephyrian Empire violated when they developed their orbital bombardment systems. The one that the Nexari Confederacy ignored when they built their planet-killer weapons. She looked around the chamber. For 200 years, humanity has been the only species that actually followed galactic law. We disclosed our defensive capabilities. We participated in arms limitation talks, and we operated our military under restrictions that no other species accepted. Elena's voice grew harder, but the treaty also contains a clause that allows for non-disclosure of capabilities that are purely defensive in nature. Every weapon system we used in the past 2 days falls under that classification. The Altarian delegate looked confused. How can weapons that destroyed an entire fleet be classified as defensive? Elena smiled coldly. Because we used them to defend our colonies from invasion. The fact that our defensive capabilities happen to be more advanced than your offensive ones is not our problem. On the main display, new reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human fleets had engaged Zephyrian forces in 16 different systems over the past 24 hours. In every case, the result had been the complete destruction or withdrawal of the alien forces. But what was causing panic in the galactic community wasn't just the human military success. It was the technology they were displaying. Ships that could travel faster than anyone thought possible. Weapons that could target individual soldiers through heavy armor and shielding. Defensive systems that seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. Where did they get this technology? Whispered the representative from the Century Federation, though his voice carried clearly in the chamber's acoustics. Elena heard the question and decided to answer it. We developed it ourselves over the past 2 centuries. While other species were fighting wars and conquering territory, we were advancing our technology. While you were building bigger weapons to threaten each other, we were building better defenses to protect ourselves. She gestured to the tactical displays showing human military operations. Every system you see here was developed in human laboratories by human scientists. We didn't steal it, we didn't buy it, and we didn't reverse engineer it from other species. We built it from scratch because we knew that someday our peaceful nature would be seen as weakness. The council speaker was looking increasingly uncomfortable. The human delegate suggests that this technology development was motivated by distrust of the galactic community. Elena looked directly at the ancient Vortan. Not distrust, realism. We hoped we would never need these capabilities. We built them as insurance against the day when diplomacy failed, and we had to defend ourselves alone. She paused, looking around the chamber at faces that had dismissed her just days before. That day came when this council chose to ignore the murder of our people and reward the murderers with applause. New reports continued to stream in. Day 3 brought news that human forces had not only repelled the Zephyrian attacks, but had begun striking back at the alien empire's military infrastructure. Weapons factories, fleet bases, and command centers throughout Zephyrian space were being systematically destroyed. But again, the precision was remarkable. Human forces were targeting only military installations while avoiding civilian populations completely. Zephyrian military bases were being destroyed while nearby cities remained untouched. They're conducting a surgical dismantling of our entire military capability, reported the Zephyrian delegate, his voice showing the strain of the past 3 days. Our fleet command estimates that we have lost 60% of our military assets. The Nexari delegate leaned forward. How is that possible? The Zephyrian Empire has one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. Had, the Zephyrian corrected, past tense. Human forces are operating with coordination that seems impossible. They attack multiple targets simultaneously across distances that should make communication impossible. Elena knew why, though she wasn't going to explain it to the council. Humanity had developed quantum communication technology that allowed instantaneous coordination across any distance. While other species were limited by light-speed communications, human forces could coordinate operations in real time across the entire galaxy. Day 4 brought even more disturbing news for the galactic community. Human forces had begun what could only be described as systematic hunting of Zephyrian military assets. Every warship, every base, every military installation was being located and destroyed with terrifying efficiency. But it wasn't just the Zephyrian Empire that was feeling the pressure. Intelligence reports were coming in about human scouts appearing in the territory of every species that had voted against Earth's request for justice. The Altarian delegate was clearly nervous as she spoke. We're receiving reports of unidentified ships in our space, ships that appear and disappear without warning, avoiding all detection until they choose to reveal themselves. Elena nodded. Reconnaissance missions. We're updating our intelligence on potential threats. Threats? The Altarian's voice was sharp. The Altarian Republic has been at peace with humanity for over a century. Elena's expression was cold. The Altarian Republic voted to deny justice to humanity when our people were murdered. That made your position on human welfare quite clear. Around the chamber, Elena could see delegates from other species that had voted against Earth beginning to look worried. They were starting to realize that humanity might have been keeping track of who their friends really were. We're not planning to attack anyone who isn't actively hostile to us, Elena said, though her tone suggested that the definition of actively hostile might be broader than it used to be. But we are reassessing our relationships with species that have shown themselves to be unreliable allies. The Kratex representative stood up, his armor clanking. Is humanity threatening the galactic community? Elena looked at him for a long moment. The galactic community threatened humanity when it chose to ignore the murder of our people. We're simply responding to that threat. Day 5 brought reports that sent panic through several governments. Human forces had not only destroyed the Zephyrian military, they had captured most of the alien empire's leadership. Fleet commanders, planetary governors, and even members of the Zephyrian Imperial Council were being taken prisoner in lightning raids that seemed to come from nowhere. They're using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before, reported the Zephyrian delegate, who was one of the few high-ranking officials of his species still free. Our sensors can't detect their ships until they're right on top of us. But the most shocking news came from intelligence services across the galaxy. Human agents using technology that made them nearly invisible to detection had infiltrated government facilities throughout known space. They weren't attacking or sabotaging, they were gathering information. They know everything, whispered the Century delegate to his aide, not realizing that the chamber's acoustics carried his words to Elena. Our military capabilities, our economic data, our political structures, they've been mapping all of it. Elena allowed herself a small smile. For 2 centuries, humanity has served as mediators and peacekeepers throughout the galaxy. Did you really think we weren't paying attention to how your governments and militaries actually work? The truth was beginning to dawn on the galactic community. Humanity hadn't just been hiding their military capabilities. They had been systematically studying every other species in the galaxy. While serving as neutral mediators, human observers had gained unprecedented access to the inner workings of dozens of different governments and military organizations. You've been spying on us for 200 years, accused the Nexari delegate. Elena shook her head. We've been learning about you for 200 years. There's a difference. Spying implies hostile intent. We gathered information because we believed that understanding other species would help us serve as better mediators and peacekeepers. She paused, looking around the chamber. Of course, that information is also quite useful when those same species prove to be untrustworthy allies. Day 6 began with surrender offers from the Zephyrian Empire and their allies. But Elena had stopped listening to alien surrender terms days ago. Instead, she was reading reports from Admiral Morrison's fleet. The war was effectively over. Zephyrian military power had been completely destroyed. Their allies had abandoned them. Most of their leadership was in human custody. Their homeworlds were defenseless, though human forces had made no move to occupy them. But the real victory wasn't military, it was psychological. The galaxy had learned that humanity possessed military capabilities that surpassed even the most advanced warrior species. More importantly, they had learned that humans could wage war with a precision and efficiency that made other species' conflicts look clumsy and wasteful. "The Zephyrian Empire formally surrenders," announced their delegate, his voice barely audible. "We accept full responsibility for the attacks on human colonies and request mercy for our civilian populations." Elena stood up slowly, holding a document that contained humanity's terms for ending the conflict. The terms had been prepared not by diplomats but by military strategists who understood that this war would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. "The terms are simple," Elena announced. "Complete withdrawal from all human territory. Payment of reparations for the lives lost and property destroyed. Surrender of all military officers involved in the attacks on our colonies for trial under human law." The Zephyrian delegate nodded eagerly. "We accept. All terms are acceptable." Elena wasn't finished. "In addition, the Zephyrian Empire will provide full disclosure of all military capabilities and assets. Human observers will be stationed in your space to ensure compliance. And finally," Elena's voice grew cold, "the Zephyrian Empire formally acknowledges that the attacks on human colonies were war crimes and apologizes to the human species for these actions." Around the chamber, delegates were realizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. A species that had been dismissed as weak and peaceful had just fought a war with such overwhelming superiority that the enemy was accepting any terms offered, no matter how humiliating. But Elena had one more announcement to make. "The human delegation also wishes to inform the Galactic Council that humanity is withdrawing from all current peacekeeping and mediation roles. We will no longer serve as neutral arbiters in conflicts between other species." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. For 2 centuries, humanity had been the galaxy's go-to mediators. Dozens of conflicts had been resolved through human intervention. Elena waited for quiet, then continued. "We have learned that our peaceful service was seen as weakness rather than strength. Since the galactic community prefers to resolve conflicts through military force rather than diplomacy, you will need to find other methods of settling your disputes." She looked around the chamber one final time. "Humanity will remain part of the galactic community, but our role has changed. We are no longer the species that other governments can ignore or dismiss. We are no longer the convenient mediators who can be counted on to sacrifice their own interests for galactic peace." Elena's voice carried absolute certainty. "We are now simply another military power in the galaxy, one that has just demonstrated we are more advanced and more capable than anyone imagined." The 6-day war was over. Humanity had won so completely that the term victory seemed inadequate. But the real change wasn't in humanity's military capabilities. It was in how the galaxy saw them. The gentle peacekeepers were gone, replaced by a species that had proven they could wage war with terrifying precision and overwhelming force. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. 3 months after the 6-day war ended, Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the first time since humanity's victory. The massive dome above still showed the same view of space, with thousands of stars twinkling in the darkness. But everything else had changed. The chamber was fuller than Elena had ever seen it. Representatives from species she had never met before sat in the curved rows of seats. Some were from distant sectors of the galaxy. Others were from smaller governments that had never bothered to attend council sessions before, but the most noticeable change was in how the other delegates looked at her as she took her seat in the human delegation box. Gone were the dismissive glances and barely concealed amusement she had grown used to. Now she saw something very different in their eyes, respect mixed with fear. Elena had arrived early, wanting to observe the chamber before the session began. She watched as delegates filed in, many of them casting nervous glances toward the human section. Conversations that had been animated and casual before her arrival became quieter and more subdued. The Altarian delegate, The same silver-skinned woman who had criticized human aggression during the war approached Elena's box with obvious reluctance. "Ambassador Vasquez," she said, her voice careful and polite. "I wanted to express the Altarian Republic's gratitude for humanity's restraint in recent weeks." Elena looked up at her with calm interest. "Restraint?" The Altarian delegate seemed to struggle with her words. "The reconnaissance missions in our space. Your ships could have. That is, we understand that you were gathering information, not preparing for hostile action." Elena nodded. "We were updating our intelligence files on species that had shown themselves to be unreliable allies. The Altarian Republic chose to deny justice to humanity when our people were murdered. We wanted to understand whether this represented a fundamental change in your government's position toward human welfare." The delegate looked uncomfortable. "And your conclusions?" Elena's expression remained neutral. "We concluded that the Altarian Republic's vote against us was based on political convenience, rather than genuine hostility. Therefore, no further action was necessary." The relief on the Altarian's face was obvious. "Thank you for that assessment, Ambassador. The Republic values its relationship with humanity and hopes to continue our cooperation in the future." As the delegate walked away, Elena reflected on how dramatically the galactic political landscape had shifted. Species that had ignored humanity for decades were now actively seeking dialogue. Governments that had dismissed human concerns were now carefully considering how their actions might affect their relationship with Earth. The council speaker tapped his staff, calling the session to order. The ancient Vorton looked older and more tired than Elena remembered, as if the past 3 months had been particularly difficult for him. "Today's session will address the formal applications for membership in the Galactic Council," he announced. "We have received requests from 17 species seeking representation in this body." Elena wasn't surprised. News of humanity's military capabilities had spread throughout the galaxy, and smaller species that had previously felt excluded from galactic politics were now seeking protection through official membership in the Council. The first application came from the Meridian Collective, a group of peaceful trading worlds in the Outer Rim. Their representative, a small humanoid with large eyes, spoke nervously from the central podium. "The Meridian Collective requests membership in the Galactic Council for protection against aggressive expansion by larger powers," he said. "Recent events have shown that peaceful species can no longer rely on informal understandings with their neighbors." Elena understood what he meant. The Six-Day War had demonstrated that military power was the ultimate arbiter of galactic politics. Smaller species that had relied on the protection of larger allies were now seeking formal guarantees of their independence. The second application was more surprising. It came from the hegemony of Teroth, a warrior species known for their aggressive expansion policies. Their representative, a massive creature covered in natural armor plates, made his request with obvious reluctance. "The hegemony seeks membership to ensure proper communication with the galactic community," he rumbled. "Recent developments have shown the importance of understanding the true capabilities of other species before taking action." Elena almost smiled. The hegemony had been planning to attack several smaller worlds along their border, but had abandoned those plans when they learned about human military technology. Now they wanted council membership as a way to avoid accidentally provoking someone who might be stronger than they appeared. As the applications continued, Elena noticed a pattern. Every species requesting membership mentioned recent events or changing galactic conditions as their motivation. They were all responding to the same thing, the realization that the galaxy was more dangerous than they had understood, and that military capabilities could be hidden behind peaceful facades. After the membership applications were processed, the speaker moved to the main business of the day. "The Council will now address the establishment of the new Galactic Security Committee," he announced. "This committee will have permanent authority to investigate threats to galactic peace and coordinate responses to military aggression." Elena stood up. This was why she had really come to the Council today. "The human delegation wishes to address the formation of this committee," she said. The chamber fell silent. Elena's words now carried weight that they had never possessed before. "Humanity accepts the permanent seat on the Security Committee that has been offered to us," Elena continued. "However, we have conditions for our participation." She activated her holographic display, showing a document that represented months of work by human diplomats and military strategists. First, the Security Committee will have the authority to conduct independent investigations of potential war crimes and violations of galactic law. This includes the power to gather evidence, interview witnesses, and compel cooperation from member governments. Elena looked around the chamber. Such investigations will not require prior approval from the full council, and their findings will be made public, regardless of political considerations. The Zephyrian Delegate, one of the few representatives his species had left, after their leadership was captured, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Elena knew he was thinking about the trials that were still ongoing for the officers who had ordered the attacks on human colonies. Second, Elena continued, the Security Committee will establish and maintain a rapid response force capable of intervening in conflicts within 72 hours of a formal request for assistance. This force will be composed of volunteers from member species and will be commanded by officers selected for their professional competence rather than their political connections. This was a direct challenge to the old system where military interventions required lengthy debates and political negotiations. Elena was proposing a force that could act quickly to stop aggression before it escalated into full-scale war. Third, the Security Committee will have the authority to impose economic and military sanctions on species that violate galactic law. These sanctions will remain in effect until the violations are corrected and appropriate reparations are made. Elena paused, looking directly at several delegates who had voted against humanity during their time of crisis. Finally, the Security Committee will maintain updated intelligence files on the military capabilities of all galactic powers. This information will be used to prevent miscalculations that could lead to unnecessary conflicts. The implications of this last point were clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity was serving notice that they would never again allow other species to operate under false assumptions about military capabilities. The Kratex representative stood up. These proposals would give the Security Committee unprecedented power over the internal affairs of sovereign governments. Elena looked at him steadily. The alternative is what we saw 3 months ago. A system where war crimes are ignored until the victims are forced to seek justice through military action. The galactic community can choose effective governance or it can choose continued chaos, but it cannot choose both. The debate continued for hours, but Elena knew the outcome was predetermined. The events of the 6-day war had demonstrated the consequences of ineffective galactic governance. No species wanted to risk finding themselves in the Zephyrian Empire's position, facing a more powerful enemy with no allies and no legal recourse. When the vote was finally called, Elena's proposals passed by an overwhelming margin. Only the Nexari Confederacy and 2 other aggressive powers voted against the new system. As the session ended, Elena found herself surrounded by delegates seeking private conversations. Everyone wanted to understand humanity's intentions and ensure their own species remained in good standing with Earth's government. The Century Federation's representative, a diplomatic man with pale blue skin, was particularly eager to speak with her. Ambassador, the Federation has been reviewing our historical relationship with humanity, he said carefully. We believe there may have been misunderstandings about our position during recent events. Elena raised an eyebrow. You mean your vote to deny justice to humanity when our colonies were attacked? The delegate looked uncomfortable. That vote was based on incomplete information and political pressures that no longer apply. The Federation values its friendship with humanity and hopes to demonstrate that through our future actions. Elena studied his face for a moment. The Federation will have opportunities to demonstrate its friendship through its work on the Security Committee. Actions, as they say, speak louder than words. As Elena left the council chamber, she reflected on how completely the galactic balance of power had shifted. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as naive peacekeepers to being recognized as the dominant military force in known space. Other species that had ignored human interests for centuries were now actively seeking Earth's approval for their policies. But Elena also knew that this new respect came with new responsibilities. Humanity could no longer simply react to events. They had to help shape the future of galactic civilization. She activated her communicator and sent a message to Earth. Mission accomplished. The new Security Committee is established with full authority to prevent future conflicts. Humanity's position in the galactic community has been permanently changed. Elena paused, then added a personal note. The galaxy has learned that peaceful species can be the most dangerous when provoked. Let's make sure they never forget that lesson. As Elena walked through the corridors of the council station, she noticed something else had changed. The artwork and monuments representing different cultures were still there, but new additions had appeared. A memorial to the victims of the attacks on human colonies, a display showing the precision of human military technology during the Six-Day War, a plaque commemorating the establishment of the new Security Committee. Humanity's story was now permanently part of galactic history, but more than that, humanity's values, the belief that justice should be swift and effective, that the strong should protect the weak, and that peace could only exist when backed by the ability to enforce it, were now the governing principles of galactic civilization. Elena stopped at a viewing port that looked out into space. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the trade routes and colony worlds, ensuring that no species would suffer what humanity had endured. The gentle peacekeepers were gone, replaced by guardians who understood that true peace required the willingness to fight for it. The Six-Day War had ended humanity's age of innocence, but it had also begun something new. An age where the galaxy's most powerful military force was guided by the wisdom of a species that had chosen peace for 2 centuries, only taking up arms when all other options were exhausted. Elena smiled as she looked out at the stars. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about underestimating peaceful species, and humanity had learned an equally important lesson about the price of naivety. Both lessons would shape the future of galactic civilization for millennia to come. In the distance, Elena could see the running lights of human patrol ships making their routine rounds. They were no longer hiding their capabilities or pretending to be simple exploration vessels. They flew openly as what they had always been, the guardians of human space and the protectors of those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy would never again mistake humanity's desire for peace as a sign of weakness, and humanity would never again allow diplomacy to fail when innocent lives hung in the balance. The age of humanity's patience had ended. The age of humanity's strength had begun.